So today is lesson 6. So we started talking about, thanks for adding that one, Miranda. LabX is a great company, and they are also really familiar with Georgia and our programs. A number of web as well as computer programmer grads work at LabX. They've grown a lot. In fact, I think, do you guys have a class? Have you had a class with Sean McKinnon yet? Has he taught you? Or is he teaching you this semester? Maybe you haven't had Sean yet as an instructor. Sean's actually a graduate of the program, and he just got hired to work. He was working for a company in Barrie, and he's actually working at LabX now. So there's quite a big team of Georgian computer studies alumni working there. So thanks, Miranda, for throwing that one into the mix. So what are we going to do today? I want to talk about the midterm exam, which will be held during next week's class. And then we want to go back to our PHP gaming site. We're going to implement delete functionality. So right now we can create games and we can view the games, but we can't delete them and we can't make changes. So we're going to take our existing pages and we're going to add the ability to delete and to update. Okay? And then one of the other tricks we're going to have to learn when we're updating is how do we pre-select the right publisher from the drop-down list? And I know this is something a couple of you had asked that you were looking at implementing in your assignment 1. It was not required for assignment 1, but we'll go over how to do this today. I'm also wanted to say super pleased everybody submitted their assignment 1 and submitted on time, which is great. Trust me, this is rare. So kudos to everybody in the class for making sure you got your assignment done and got it in on time, because that's not not a super common occurrence. Okay, so our midterm exam. So let me go over the format of the exam. So the exam, we're just going to hold it in class. So next week, you just sign into WebEx for 11 a.m. like you usually do, and you'll have from 11 a.m. you'll have to submit the exam by 2 p.m. Okay? The exam's worth 15% of your final grade, and there's 2 different components, and they're weighted equally. One half of the exam is multiple choice, and basically it's going to be most of the questions. You're going to get every student's going to get a random pool of questions, and the quiz questions that we've already had from the weekly review quizzes, those questions will make up the bulk of the pools. So if you've been doing the weekly review questions, you're going to get questions that you've already seen before. So that's one of the other benefits of having done the weekly quizzes. Okay. There won't be any weekly quiz that you have to submit for next week. You only have to prepare for the exam. So there will be questions in the exam about today's lesson, but it's not going to be a separate quiz that you have to do in addition to studying. David, trying to be mindful of your workload. Okay. So that's the first part of the exam. The second part of the exam is a small practical section where you'll need to run a script in your MySQL database on AWS, and you'll need to build 2 or 3 PHP pages that interact with that database. And then you will upload those to GitHub and submit your GitHub and AWS links for the practical section of the test. I imagine many people are not going to need the full 3 hours, but you'll have the full 3-hour window available. And the reason that I want everybody to sign into WebEx is simply so that you can use the chat if you need clarification or you have questions during the exam. I can't help you debug anything, but I can clarify if there's anything you don't understand. Does anybody have any questions about the midterm? Okay, that's good, Ariel. Yeah, time shouldn't be a big concern. Are there any other questions about the midterm? Okay, yeah, I mean, the goal isn't to trick you. The goal is just to make sure to verify that you're learning the things that we've covered in class, is the idea. So I will be sure to open up the WebEx room by 10:50, and I will give the exam instructions right at 11. So, and I'm only going to repeat the instructions once. So you'll want to be in the exam room. You'll want to be in WebEx by 11, not at 11:17 will not be an ideal arrival time because you'll miss the instructions. Okay, so I would suggest sign into WebEx a little bit before 11 o'clock, just to give yourself the maximum amount of time. Okay, if you arrive late, you don't get any extra time. If you don't submit your exam by 2 o'clock, you will not get a mark. So it's not 3 hours from whenever you start the exam. Just so we're clear, everyone's clear on that. All right, so I'm going to connect to AWS in my VPN. I'm going to start my XAMPP server, open up our PHP storm. We'll get our PHP gaming site up and running again. And then we can discuss the changes, the additions we want to make to it. So I'll connect to the VPN. By now, this stuff should be getting pretty familiar for you. Actually, my XAMPP server is already running. And I'll open up PHP Storm. Overall, how did assignment 1 go? On a scale of difficulty of 1 to 5, how difficult did you feel it was?
3.
Okay. Colton says 3 as well. Anybody else? What did you think? How difficult? Scale of 1 to 5. 5 being the most difficult. Three as well. Thanks, Mike. Okay. 2.5 to 3. Okay. 3 to 4. Fun time trying to find the errors. Yeah, and you know what? Trying to find the errors, that's part of programming. Like we all do it. I've been doing this for 22 years now, and I don't have a class where I don't make errors in my code, and I even have all my code documented. So learning how to pay attention to what the error messages say, try to search online, asking for help if you can't solve it. That's part of being a developer and putting things together. Yeah, and it is rewarding when ultimately you have this idea and you work through it, and eventually you get a product to show. That's kind of the reward of doing this sort of work. All right, so let's fire up the site. So here's where we left off last week. We have our games page. And we modified our game details. Right, we added this little header here. And then we also added a drop-down list. So we could choose a publisher from the publishers table and attach the publisher to our game. So our next trick with this application, so we've got read functionality here, we've got create functionality, we want to enable delete functionality. So what are all the things we need to do to enable? So right now, once we add a game, it's in there permanently. We have no way of getting rid of it. What will we need to do today, which we should be able to do but by noon, get this working? What's everything we need to do so that a user can pick a game and delete it? What's that process going to look like? Okay, so at some point, yes, Colton, we're going to have to delete from the database. Okay, yeah, we're going to have to add some delete UX option. Right, so we're going to have to give, and there's a few different ways we could do it. Any suggestions? So Ariel's right. Yeah, we'll have the option. Okay, yes, David, but we want the users to delete from here. So we're not going to delete, right? We're not letting our users, we could do that as the site owners, we could go into the database and delete. So they can see everything here. So yes, we will need to connect to the database in our code before we delete. So if we want to enable the delete functionality, okay, so you select first and then delete from there. Yeah, we could do that. That would be an option. Where else could we put the delete, like the user interface component for deletion? We could do it on a separate page, and that would be fine. Could we do it on this page if we wanted to? Yes, Nafisa, we probably do want a publisher column. If we've got time today, we will come back and add that. So remind me, if we've got time today, we will do that. Let's maybe just focus on delete for right now. So right now, this page is read-only. How or where could we add the ability for users to delete on this page? What might make sense? Okay, so we could add some kind of button or link into each row. So that would do the selecting for us. So that would work. Okay, so let's say we put like an X button or a garbage can icon or just a delete button or link here. What should happen when you click it then? So we put a box or an icon or a link or a button in each row. I like that idea. That's a good point. And Colton, why is that important? We could just connect to the database and delete, right? Because users might click on, they might click the wrong link, especially now, right? If they're accessing it on a mobile device. If we have a little delete link, very easy, you know, you got chubby thumbs like me, pretty easy to tap on the wrong record. And that's right. You can't, once you delete it from the database, it's gone. The only way to get it back is to restore your database from the backup, which is expensive, time consuming, and also means you're going to lose any new data since your backup was taken. So we don't want that. Okay, so we want to add some ability for users to mark an item for deletion. We want to give them a confirmation. We want to connect to the database. We want to delete the record. And then what should happen on this page after we do all those things? So once the deletion is completed, there's one more thing we should do. What's that? Okay, yeah, we could show a confirmation. That's one option. That would work. It's a good idea. Anything else we could do? Yeah, we could just refresh the list and the user would be able to see. So I've got some duplicates here. I've got some empty records. I want to be able to delete these things and clean them up. So if I just refresh this page after the delete is done, I should notice that whatever record I clicked on is gone. So we could refresh the list or show confirmation message. Either one of these would work. So we're going to do these things kind of, we'll add these steps one at a time so we can actually delete stuff from here. So let's go to our games page. So the first thing I'm going to do, right now we've got 3 columns, title, release year, and rating. I'm going to add a 4th column here, and then we can put delete links or delete buttons inside. Just for simplicity, I'll use buttons or text links, which we can style with Bootstrap, rather than us going to have to search for icons. So on my line 25, here's our table, along with our table headers. So after my last closing TH tag, I'm going to open up one new TH tag, and I'll just put in the heading of actions. So I'm just putting that in before I close my table header. So just highlighted in blue the new piece here. So this will now take our table, which had 3 headings, and it'll give it a 4th heading, just in front of our end T-head tag. Then I'm going to scroll down inside my loop, and we've got 3 columns right now, 3 sets of opening and closing TD tags. So after my last one, but before the end of the row, I'm going to put in a carriage return, and I'm going to add a new column. And in here, I'm going to put in a link. And our link is going to go to deletegame.php. And I'll just make my link say the word delete. We're going to build this link in stages because we'll start out simple and then it's going to get more complex for several reasons. We'll want to style it, we'll want a confirmation, and then we're going to need to do one other vital task with our link. So for now, all I've added is this, just a standard column with an anchor tag. There's nothing nothing new here, nothing revolutionary. We took a table with 3 columns, we've added a 4th column, and we've put a text link inside of that column. So just some standard HTML. Sorry, Tanya, where did I forget a colon?
After the TD, because when I'm refreshing it, it gives me an error.
No, because this quote continues. So there's no closing quote here and no opening here.
Oh, okay, yeah. I closed mine.
Yeah, so that's why. So now if I refresh, it looks like this. If we click any of these right now, we get a 404 error. That's fine. We haven't built this page yet. We'll build it next. Now, I also can style the buttons a little bit. So I can use Bootstrap for this. So I have a couple of options. If I want these to stay as text links, I could use a class of text danger. And if I do that, my links are going to turn red, which is kind of useful for deletion. So that's one option, if you like. I could also style my links as buttons using a different danger class. So if we wanted them to be buttons, I could use BTN danger, and then I'll get a red button with white text. So you could use either one of these classes. I think I'll use the buttons. So if you want text links, you can use text-danger as your class. If you want a button, you can use BTN and BTN-danger as your class. So the links look good. They're functional. But there's two things missing. What's missing from our links? Fairly simple so far, just plain HTML. It's a standard anchor tag with some styling. What's missing from our link? Okay, yes, we will need delete game.php. That's true. I guess I should say there's three things missing. Colton, why do we have BTN? Okay, BTN is the base button class. We'll modify it just to show you. If we just use BTN, this is the root. Actually, maybe we don't even need it. We used to need it, but maybe we don't with Bootstrap 5. Let's just try if we use BTN danger only. Yeah, see, without the BTN, it is red, but it doesn't look like a button. So the BTN class on its own, that actually gives it the edges of a button. So it's two separate classes. Good question. Okay, so we're going to need a delete game.php. David says we're just going to delete to the page right now. We need a way to connect the specific row we clicked to whatever happens on delete.php. Exactly. So all these links work, but once we get to the next page, we don't know which game the user wanted to delete. We just know that this page has loaded. So what can we do so that when David, you're on the right track. We're not actually going to use a post because we're not submitting a form here. So how could we identify a particular game in our link when the user clicks it? You're on the right track, David. We're not going to use post, but we could use something similar. Post is one common HTTP method, right? We want to use the ID. Ariel, good guess. That's kind of what we're doing, but we're not going to use a select tag. We just want the users to click the buttons. So when we click the button on our link, we also want to pass the ID of the game that was selected. So here's how we're going to do it. In our URL, we can add a parameter. So we're going to have game ID equals, and then we're going to append on as a variable the primary key value, as David said, the database ID. So after my equal sign, the syntax here gets a bit messy. Sorry. I'm going to put in a single quote, and then we're going to append our game ID and then another single quote. So our link now looks like this. So all the links are still going to delete game.php, but each one is passing in an ID as part of that URL. So this question mark indicates we are passing a parameter called game ID. So let's look at what this does when we use this syntax of using parameters on the end of our URL. So when I click the first one, my URL is game ID equals 10,000. Great. When I click the second one, I get the next ID. And so on. So this is how, when we click a link, we can pass the identifier to the database. This is, for example, if you're on any social media site and you click on a user's you see a list of contacts or friends or accounts you follow, and each one of those is a link. When you click on it, they all call the same page, but they pass in the ID of the account or the profile or the user that you want to see. So that's exactly what we're doing here. We're replicating that. Actually, let's maybe look at an example, just for fun. Let's go here. So if I look at connections, right, I get a list. And if I click on a connection, this is actually using the ID. It's just sort of hidden, right? But notice the URL. It's LinkedIn /in, and then, well, they're passing the username instead of the ID. If I click on someone else, it's the same URL, but there's just a different ending here. It's just formatted a little bit differently. But the same page loads each time. Just passes in the user's ID to the page. So when we click from the list, we can now pass the ID. So we've added our UX option, and that option correctly identifies the right game for the next page. So we've done our first step here. So our second step is to add a confirmation. So before we go to the delete page, we want the user to confirm that that they definitely want to do the delete. So we can actually use a little bit of JavaScript for this. So we've already got a JS folder here. So we're going to use this folder to create a file with some of our own custom JavaScript that we'll write as we build out this application. So for now, we want a delete confirmation message. Later on, we might add scripts for things like checking strong passwords, for example. So open up your JS folder, And let's make, I'm going to right click it and make a new JavaScript file, which I will call, doesn't really matter what you call it, I'll just call it scripts. And because I've said the type is JavaScript, PHPStorm's automatically going to give it a .js extension. If I type the .js, that's cool too, no problem. So we'll write a function called, you sure? And in here, we can use a built-in JavaScript function that some of you may know already. Does anybody know the function in JavaScript that pops up a little modal window, displays a text message, and it has an OK button and a cancel button? JavaScript has this built-in functionality, so we just want to use that function. Close, David. So alert is almost like that. The only difference with alert is an alert only has an OK button. You read the message, you click OK to dismiss it. So it's a form of an alert, but it actually comes with an OK button that returns true and a cancel button that returns false. So that's what we want to use. It starts with a C, the name of that function. No one knows it? Okay, well, you're about to learn. It's very handy. So we are going to use the JS confirm function. OK equals true, cancel equals false. So we want to return So here's our simple function. It's just going to return a true or false. If the user clicks the OK button, it gives us true. If they click cancel, it gives us false. Pretty simple script. So it's like an alert, except it also has a cancel button. So if we evaluate this function, if it returns true, the user clicked OK. If it returns false, it means the user clicked cancel. So we've written this function here. Now we want to execute this function every time any one of our delete buttons gets clicked. Right? If I refresh and click one now, there's no little pop-up window saying, are you sure you want to delete this? So what do we need to do to kind of connect them together? So when a user clicks one of those red delete buttons, before they get taken to the delete game page, which we do have to build, they get this pop-up window with an OK and a cancel button. And if they click cancel, nothing happens. How do we connect these together? We have to do two things. So we've written a JavaScript function, but it's not getting executed right now. How do we ensure this code gets enabled? Okay, so yeah, we're going to need an event listener on the delete button. Yep. And we have to do one other thing on our games page. So we will need a click event listener to make our anchor tag even more complicated. So we can do that. So after our class, we can add onClick equals so it calls our yeah sure method. So when you click the button, it's going to call our function, which will pop up a modal window, display this message with an OK and a cancel button. So let's try this out. So now if I go back and refresh my games page, we should get this little pop-up if we try to delete something. Let's try it. What happened? Why don't we get a pop-up message? Why did we get taken here? Any ideas? The code is actually okay, but we've missed a step. Our yeah sure function, that's right, we've never included the script file on our page, so it can't call this function. So we need a script tag. So we've got a link to our JavaScript file in order to execute the function inside it. So I'm going to go back and try it again. I'm going to refresh. Now we get our little pop-up. If I click cancel, that shouldn't have happened, should it? When I click OK, it should take me to the next page. But when I click cancel, I'm supposed to stay where I am. So we've got to make one little fix. Here's our debugging. So we missed one thing, and that is on the click event. Instead of calling the method, our click event has to return the method. It has to evaluate whether this returns true or false. So the onClick handler needs a return in front. This will decide whether the link should execute or whether it was canceled. So I'll refresh. And now when I click cancel, we don't go off to our next page. Only when I click OK. Okay, so we needed to return the statement. So now we've done the first two steps. We needed to give the user some ability to indicate what they wanted to delete. And we wanted to make sure that they confirmed their choice before we actually delete anything from the database. Are there any questions from anybody so far? It's quite a messy link. Yes, here's Ariel. When you say not found, that the JavaScript isn't found or the delete game isn't found? Right. It should take you to a not found page because we haven't built delete game yet. So that's actually the raw, mine does the same. If I say, okay, I get 404 not found. So that's okay. We're going to build this page after we take a break. Okay, yeah, so check has to be spelled exactly. What we're gonna do, we're gonna take a break. I'm gonna upload the code to GitHub, so you feel free to check your code against mine on GitHub. So I will do our usual git commands, git add, git commit. So we started delete. Okay, so I've uploaded the code to GitHub. So you can check yours against mine for any errors. We will take a break and we'll come back at 12:05. We're going to build the delete game page that will do these things. Connect to the database, delete the selected record, and then take the user back. Okay. Good. All right, we'll come back at 12:05.